So I want to talk about authenticity and being yourself. If you're a young person, maybe teenager, early 20s, maybe you're late high school, transition to college, this period of your life where you're sort of transitioning into adulthood and you're given more responsibility and freedom and control over your life, and you might not necessarily know what to do. I know there's been periods where I'm looking up videos or essentially just advice videos from other people talking about essentially like what's the best way to traverse life? What type of philosophy should I have on life? How should I present myself to the world? And a very common answer, which I think is the right answer, but it can be a little bit misleading or maybe vague, which is to just be yourself. And I think other people might relate or can agree with like the fact that yes, you understand that you should just be yourself, but what what does that actually mean? Like, how do I know who exactly I am internally, or how do I actually know who I want to be? Because when you're growing up from an early age and you're constantly being fed information from other people in your life, like the biggest one is like your family, your parents, and kind of telling you, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, and you're constantly absorbing this information. Your teachers in school, maybe your classmates and peers, all these people are giving you perspectives on the world through their own lens, and you're kind of absorbing it and internalizing it, and you sort of latch onto it subconsciously without knowing. It's kind of confusing because what you really realize is, looking back, all that you really are is just an amalgamation of different principles or values that have kind of been imprinted on you from a young age. At least that's how it seems. I think there are other examples. Like if you're, I think people, when you're young and you want to sort of fit in, maybe to a friend group or something, and you maybe in order to feel like you belong, you might pick up on certain hobbies that those people might have, and you might start doing them, and then you sort of define yourself through those through those sort of activities. Maybe you're in a relationship, and you define yourself as this relationship with this other person, and you present yourself to the world as this sort of couple. Or maybe you're sort of reflecting the values or the wishes of your parents. That could be a big one also. But all these things are you defining your existence through the lens of other people, and it's not your true essence of how your soul actually wants to express itself. So, all this being said, I think it can be really difficult if you hear advice like just be yourself, or just be your authentic self, or don't care what other people think, and just expect that like it works if you don't actually know who you are deep down. I do think it is good advice to be yourself, and that is how you should present yourself, but the way that you actually do go about learning who you are is simply just by being alone. And you need to spend time alone, and learn to be comfortable with yourself alone. Because when you're sort of isolating yourself from other people, other distractions, because life can get very busy. Life can get very busy and chaotic, and it's easy to distract yourself. But when you sort of tune all that out and you're just left with your own thoughts and your own reflection in the mirror, you are kind of forced to confront aspects of yourself that you might not be that proud of, or you might have been ignoring, or maybe even lying to yourself about because it's too shameful, or maybe it's a lot of work, or maybe you just don't really want to claim responsibility for that. But when you are sort of forced to stay alone, you kind of have to address those problems. And I think that kind of marks a transition from sort of being alone or maybe lonely and uncomfortable with yourself to sort of moving into a transition of becoming comfortable with yourself. All being comfortable with yourself really means is you're sort of giving energy, you're putting energy into yourself, into things that you want to change. Maybe you don't like the way that you eat, or you don't like the way that you look. Maybe you want to go work out more. Maybe you want to pursue more time with certain hobbies that you might have not been giving yourself enough time for, instead of doing stuff like doom scrolling or just rotting away. That's all energy that you're putting into yourself to sort of better yourself. And once you're at a point where you feel comfortable and you've addressed certain things that you've been putting off, then you can kind of begin to start to love yourself. And loving yourself is different than being comfortable with yourself, because when you love yourself, you sort of accept yourself completely for who you are. Like, nobody's perfect, and what that means is that you recognize the flaws that you have along with every other person has. You recognize those flaws and you sort of integrate that into your entire being, and you're who you are as a person. And it's without shame, it's without judgment, and you recognize like all aspects of yourself. And once you're at that sort of point, what actually happens is you don't care what other people think about you. If someone were to criticize you or say or judge you, you're kind of past that point, because you're past the point of judgment towards yourself. So you're sort of however the world might perceive you kind of doesn't faze you, and that's what allows you to then truly live life as yourself. How people sort of just say, just be yourself. That's how you do it. And that's when you're able to sort of present a sort of raw, unfiltered version of yourself to the world. And that's when people sort of start to notice and sort of recognize a sort of a difference in you. If you can think about like people that you might look up to, or people that sort of radiate a certain really very strong aura or personality that might be really attractive. It doesn't necessarily just need to be famous people or celebrities. Like, there are people just in your life who do the same, but what they all have in common usually is they're sort of unabashedly themselves, and they have a strong personality. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like forcing it on anyone. Quite the opposite. Like, you don't need to sort of, if you are confident in yourself, you don't need to sort of shove it in anyone's face. But it's very present, and it's a radiant energy that they sort of release, or they sort of just give off. So all that I'm kind of saying is, yeah, it's really as simple as just spending time alone and looking inwards and meditating on your life and who you kind of are. And simple isn't the same as easy. It's a very simple truth. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. In fact, it will probably be quite hard and long and difficult and isolating and lonely. It can be some lonely sometimes. At the start, uh, it's not something that is an easy thing to do, but I think when you kind of come out to the other side, it's really worth it because you're no longer sort of living for the validation of others, or are constantly feeling this anxiety around how society thinks you should be or how you truly want to be. It's actually the opposite. Your existence is validating to yourself, and you do things that are validating to yourself, and you know spend energy doing things that you want to do, and it's very liberating. And I think it's the best way to sort of traverse life. So that's pretty much it. Spend time alone, and if you don't know who you are yet, that's okay. No one really knows when you're born. I think very few people do, but it's there. Trust me. Like everyone, your soul tells you that you want to be is already there deep down somewhere, and you just have to go and find it.